Hey everyone, welcome back to I Told My Wife I'm Paying Bills. I'm Slim,
And I'm Black. We are back.
and we are back, and we are coming today with a very nostalgic episode. Unfortunately, sorry, we're not talking about games again today, but you know what? This is a geek podcast, so uh, I have actually been very nostalgic for the last couple of I want to say months really because I don't know something struck me a couple months ago and it was probably when I just installed a new Roku on my office TV or something, I don't know. But I wanted to look up old TV shows. So I ended up looking up and I found Mask. You remember that, Black?
Oh
The
yeah.
TV show Mask? That show was so I don't even know the way to put it. Like it was good for what it was in the 80s. And it was just interesting. So, either way though, that got me started on saying what other shows I could find, and I've been watching all these shows, like I said, for, like, the last month or so, and so I was like, "You know what? I wanna do an episode talking about that." So, today's episode, we're gonna be actually talking about the shows from the '80s and the toys that accompanied them, and we're gonna be actually kinda discussing about how, basically, some of our favorite cartoons were nothing but ads for the toys. So, um, Black, give me a rundown, really quick rundown of like some of the shows, not the toys yet, but just tell me some of the shows you used to watch as a kid back in the '80s.
Oh man. There's a long list of them, but I'll be as quick as possible. But let's go with Transformers. That's one. You
Oh,
had
of course,
Cops.
of course.
I don't know if you remember Cops, but that was really big for me. You know,
Dude,
um,
I have been watching Cops on Tubi for like the last month and a half.
they got it on Tubi.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the only reason why
Okay, I'm
it's
gonna
been
check it
about a
out.
month and a half yeah, right? The only reason why it's been about a month and a half is because in between that, I've been watching G.I. Joe, and I've
Mhm,
been watching, there's this one called, not Wildcats, Ultra Force. I've seen Ultra
mhm.
Force, and I've been watching all these other shows while watching Cops.
Yeah. So what I say, Transformers, Cops, uh,
Mhm.
uh, GI Joe. Uh, I mean, the list goes on and on. Man, I even remember Brave Star. And I don't
Dude,
know if they had a toy for that one, but
they
Brave
did.
Star.
They did. I'll get into that a little bit later. But
Yeah.
yeah, they had a Brave Star toy, and that show, I remember that show. That's another one I need to look up and see if they have. Um, yeah, but it's funny because really all you gotta do is now if you Google the show, it will tell you exactly where the shows are. And
Mm,
so it's pretty funny because um a lot of these shows are having such a bigger resurgence that some of these shows are actually coming back, like He-Man. Um, the director Kevin Smith, he actually did a couple of episodes of He not episodes. He did a series of He-Man. It's one single show, but each show has like each season has its own specific title. So, but it's a direct continuation of the '80s version of He-Man. So that was actually really interesting. Different. It's a different art style, and different things happen, but the way he did it was a direct continuation of that, and I love that show. I so many people I've seen online bash that show, but, I actually watched and I'm current on the seasons, and it is so good. I enjoyed it because I enjoyed He-Man, which
mm.
He-Man itself was a weird concept, but anyway, let's go ahead and
Yeah, it is.
jump into yeah, let's go ahead and jump into some of our shows too, because, like, let me tell you, like, some of the shows that I like, G.I. Joe, like you said, Cops, Brave Star, Transformers, of course, because we did a whole show on that. Go
Yep.
listen to our old show. So then we had other shows that was just a little bit off too. Well, then this is a '90s show, like Gummy Bears. That was like one. Pretty much all the Disney shows that they had back in the days, the Disney Afternoon. They had Tailspin. They had what was it? It was Tailspin. It
Yeah,
was
Tailspin, I remember that.
oh, I can't think. The other one is in my head. Darkwing Duck. I can't believe
Yeah,
I almost
Chip and
forgot.
Dale and all that
Yeah,
other stuff.
Chippendale. Yeah, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So that was all the ones that we had when we were a little bit older, but it was still more nostalgic. But going back to those '80s shows, it was crazy how some of these companies was just like, okay, we need to sell toys. What are we gonna do to sell this toy specifically? Because I have this idea and I want to sell this toy, but I need to figure out exactly what I need to do. Okay, let's go ahead and make a cartoon. Boom. And that's how some of our favorite nostalgic cartoons came out. And what's even like more interesting about that is, do you know it seemed like it was so much longer, but a lot of these cartoons that we loved were only like 1 or 2 seasons.
Uh,
That was like, is that's insane to me. I
mhm.
feel like those cartoons were on forever, but they really only had G.I. Joe. Do you know how many seasons G.I. Joe had?
I'm gonna
Take a
guess.
take a wild
At
guess.
least 6 seasons, at least.
Nope, nope. G.I. Joe only had Chris, if you get a chance, look it up for me and see. But I wanna say G.I. Joe only had, like, 4 seasons. They
What?
had they had the 2 original seasons that we watched that led up to the movie. Then after the movie, they had another season that kinda flipped the show, where they pretty much stopped, with all the regular Joes that we normally saw, and they brought in all these new Joes. Now, this is a little bit of a backlash that they got for doing this. So, do you remember in G.I. Joe the movie and in Transformers the movie, the most iconic uh the most iconic character got hurt. And I'm only saying hurt because they got so much backlash with the original, like with Transformers. And I believe that they, if I can remember correctly, they were both produced by the same company, but um they got so much backlash from Transformers that they ended up flipping the end, of the movie for G.I. Joe, and you can actually kinda tell how some of the stuff is, and if you listen to the movie and listen to certain parts of G.I. Joe the movie, but parents were so upset that that children had to go through the death of Optimus Prime, and
Oh,
children were so
yeah.
upset about that. Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
was real.
that was, like that was
That was
heartbreaking, man.
real.
That was so heartbreaking, and because of that, and because of the backlash they got, they changed G.I. Joe. If you remember, um, there we go. So G.I. Joe ran from September 12th, 1983 to November 20th, 1986. Yeah. So
Seems
that's
like
only
it's
been
only,
that
like,
was only
3.
3 years. That's only 3 years, yeah. So and I watched all the seasons on, and it's on Tubi. Season 3 is on, YouTube. I had to watch it on, so I just turned that on when I was working in the garage, and I could halfway ignore it because 'cause I'm doing stuff in the garage, you know? But, yeah, it was so crazy, so heartbreaking. So if you remember, Optimus Prime, he died in Transformers, and because of that, and they changed it up. Duke got hit in the chest with a snake from Serpentor, in G.I. Joe in the movie, and because of all the backlash and, like, they did a focus group and everything like that, they changed it up. So, like, you can hear Doc say at one point, he's just like, he slipped into a coma or he's gone into a coma. They changed it up and the way he sounds is really odd for him to just say somebody's going into a coma, but they had to add extra, like, wording in there and stuff like that, and then later on at the end of the movie, they was like, "Duke's gonna be okay, yay," you know? So,
Yeah. Well,
that was done because of the backlash, but the purpose of trying to kill those characters off was because they wanted, they wanted those characters gone so they can sell new characters.
I think that the mistake in that is that some characters are so iconic, you can't kill them. I mean, you
Exactly,
can't kill them. You
exactly.
know?
Exactly. And that was the funniest part is because you had Optimus Prime. They killed off Optimus Prime, who is the leader of the Transformers. Well, like, what was the thought process behind that? Why didn't you, okay, if you're gonna kill off other characters, that's fine. But Optimus Prime was the one person that most kids cared about.
Mhm.
Kids, they wanted to see, every week, they wanted to see Optimus all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what the main thing that was about that was, was kids just wanted to see that. So, it was crazy, and that whole backlash from Optimus that caused them to go ahead and say, "Nope, nope, nope, we're not gonna kill off Duke. He's still alive. Hey, everybody, he's here." So, The movie ended up being weird, but after the movie, it got even weirder because they didn't kill him off, but he disappeared. So if you watch season 3 of G.I. Joe, and Chris ended up showing it was like 2 seasons of G.I. Joe, but like I said, that was the original G.I. Joe series. Um, and then after that, there was, another season that happened, and I think it was just named something differently, because they actually have some other series that ran. They had G.I. Joe American Hero, they have G.I. Joe Extreme, G.I. Joe Sigma 6, and G.I. Joe Renegade. Um, but there's a season in between Extreme and G.I. Joe Real American Hero, that is basically Real American Hero, but it wasn't. And that one is where they have all the weird, like, they had, like, a dude, they had a dude, like, his eyes was covered, and I can't remember what his name was right now, uh, but he had, like, rockets on his legs, and he goes, "Bang, bang," the whole time. It's like, "Bang, bang." He's like range 24, and something, something,
I
bang.
know who
You
was
know what I'm
that
talking
guy?
about?
Yeah, I know who
Yeah,
you talking
yeah.
about. He had a big
So,
missile on his back.
yeah, he had the big missile on his back, and he had, like,
Yeah.
2 sides that missile launchers on each
Mhm.
leg. And then instead of having Duke in charge, and Hawk, like, over like, instead of having the same chain of command, they got rid of pretty much the whole chain of command. Duke was gone, but not because if you watch, he showed up in, like, a couple episodes, but they didn't let him speak. It was crazy. It was like they just had the character in the background as a regular soldier. It's so wild.
Mhm.
Duke was gone. Flint was gone. Um Hawk was there, but Hawk had this weird costume now, and he was kind of quasi retired, so that was really weird. Um, and then it was Duke, Hawk, Flint, Beachhead was gone. Beachhead was their drill instructor, and then they
Mhm.
kept Sergeant Slaughter, and they kept Lady J. She was one of the that was there before, and then Stalker was still there, but he had changed up to everything that he did. But that was pretty much the core ones that stayed, and then everyone else was pretty much new. It was so weird, and then, of course, they ended up, on the villain side, which I wanna do a villains podcast. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. But,
Mhm.
on the villain side, they had Cobra Commander,
Mhm.
they had, Destro still, they had the Baroness still, and
Oh,
then
Destro, I remember him.
yeah, and then I think they pretty much got rid of most of the Dreadnoks, but not really. But they had, like, Zarana and all that, and and,
Mhm.
they had a whole bunch of other ones that they kept, but then they got rid of a whole bunch of other people, and then they brought minor characters, they brought them more to the forefront. So they had different Vipers who had specific names. So,
Yeah,
they had
shout
you
out to
said, oh,
Storm Shadow.
Yeah, Storm Shadow, like that too. And I think by this time, I think Storm Shadow was actually part of the Joe team, but I can't remember if they actually had that in the cartoon or not. So, but anyway, if you look now, um, now all this stuff has come back, and like I was saying earlier, so there's a big resurgence of it where you see all these new versions of these toys. You see GI Joe toys, you see Transformers coming back, and they actually have different ones. Even the superpowers. Do you remember superpowers?
Mhm.
You do. All right. I'm about to show you something right here. It's really funny in a second though. But this is the superpowers, and I know this doesn't make for good podcast sound, but you got to see this. Hold on. So I went to a Comic Con a couple years ago, and I got this. This is a much larger size
Oh,
superpowers
that's beast.
Batman. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite toys, and this is kind of goes back to what I was talking about on one of our other podcasts. How um, for Christmas my mother went and got us all these superpower toys and all that. So that was a Batman one, and I was so nostalgic about that. I saw it at a Comic Con. I had to buy it. Now all those superpower toys have been reissued, and they've got other ones. So it's crazy too because on my Batmobile shelf, I'm having a shelf. I'm gonna make a shelf with all Batmobiles. I wanted to find the original Superpowers Batmobile because the reissue they've done has um has changed up a little bit, so it's a little bit different and it's kind of weird. So that's kind of jacked up though. But you know, it's all these toys are so nostalgic. It's almost so weird to me, and I don't know if tell me if you feel this way, but these shows are so nostalgic and they were so good, but it was almost like they were like implanted, like we were brainwashed to love these toys because they like because of the cartoon.
Well,
And
I
these
think yeah. I
yeah.
think they go hand in hand, but
Mhm.
no, it was the shows first, and then they knew. I mean, I don't know how, because obviously back then they didn't keep track of viewers and shows and stuff like that, but somehow they knew, hey, this show, we got to make a toy for. It. We got to
Yeah.
make a toy, because they
Well
almost had a
well
toy for every damn show.
well, that's because a lot of the shows started off because of the toy,
Mhm.
and that's what it was. So, again, like I said, like Transformers toys, they were in the works before the cartoon came out. And around that time, one of the major reasons is because they couldn't market directly to children, and that's what it is basically. So, they use these shows as their marketing ads, and that's how everything ended up happening.
That's
Um,
crazy. That's almost like backwards though,
yeah,
because
yeah, but
you
but
know,
it's the way they make money.
yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. But, I mean, we're just thinking about it now versus
Mm,
back then. All we did was enjoy the shows and the toys. But we don't know,
yeah.
based off of what you're saying now. The toys came first and then the show, and I'm
Mhm.
like, well, you need something to promote the toy, and you think the show was going to come first,
Well,
but
see, a lot of it, the show did come first. However, the toys were already in the works. So the show actually beefed up the toy, and they got a lot of this information from Nielsen ratings and things like that. They actually have a lot of stuff to see, like, and that's how, a lot of the research is done, so they know what to market, who to do. They also do a lot of focus groups before some of this stuff comes out too. So in 1990, the Federal Communications Commission actually ruled that shows were okay provided they didn't advertise their own toy lines during commercial breaks. Action
they
for
also,
Children's toys.
yeah, yeah,
That's
no, go
crazy.
ahead, Chris.
No, no, no. It's like I see the Action for Children's television lobbied for shows like Thundercats, He-Man, and from the airways. Wow. So they wanted to remove these shows, which some of our beloved shows, they because of the toy lines directed to them because the shows themselves were ads. That's just
Wow,
crazy.
that is crazy. I mean, just to think about it now, and shout out to our producer Chris for giving us that information. But oh my gosh, man, that's insane, man. You would That's just
Yeah.
mind blowing right there.
And so okay, so I got off on a wild tangent because of the whole the like the superpowers and the different Joes and stuff like that. So coming back to it, sorry, coming back to my original point, right? These shows, that we loved, it was just they were so funny and so wholesome, but then also so weird. Do you remember some of the weirdness of some of these shows?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Some of
mean,
them were a little weird.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
little boy, a little weird.
let's talk about like okay, like Thundercats, right? The Thundercats was such a good show, but it was so freaking weird because these are talking cats from another planet, alien cats, right?
Mm,
They landed on a planet called Thurder.
mm.
And when they're on Thundera, the whole time these cats are like freaking naked. And as soon as they fly through space and they land, as soon as they land and all that, they're in clothes and like they have basically skimpy clothes. I think only one of them had like a full outfit. Well, no, there was a couple that had full outfits, whatever. But like it was really weird, man. Like, do you
What?
remember?
I mean, it was. Well, Thundercats. I really like Thundercats, but you're right. I
Yeah,
mean, they
but
they were some naked cats back
yeah,
back on Thundera, man.
yeah, yeah. And it was crazy because, like, for some of these things, they came up with the ideas for the toys, so the writers ended up having to write them into the show, and a lot of those shows, those toys that came in a weird way, um, like, the new vehicles they ended up having, the new characters they ended up having in Thundercats. I watched the whole season of the first series, well, all the seasons of the first series, and the way they did it was really well, no, it wasn't that odd, but it was kinda odd because I think it was called one of them was called, like, the Thunderstruck and all this other whatever. And it was so funny too because, like, the original Lionel was originally named Lionel, and it was changed to avoid any confusion with the toy. Do you remember the Lionel train? Do you remember
Look,
those?
yeah, I do, but I would have thought that they didn't wanna call him Lionel because, Lionel Richie. I'm just saying, it just
Yeah.
sounds like Lionel Richie,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
singer
I
from
got
back
you,
in
I
the
got
'80s.
you. Yeah, but so it's so funny about that because going back to it, right? What I was saying about, like, their clothing and stuff and how weird it was. Thundercats was actually redone in, 2012, and, the 2012 series, they ended up, doing it so much better, and it was less weird. It was still they were still, talking cats from another planet, um, but they did it a whole lot less weird. They were more clothed, and their story made a little bit more sense than what we got in the '80s, So that was actually really funny. And what's funny about the 2012 series is, do you ever see those Progressive commercials?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
So there's like a team of people in Progressive now, right? There's one
Mhm.
girl called, I wanna say is Mara or whatever. Her name is she's a comedian named Natalie Palamides or whatever. I'm saying her name so wrong. But, in in, um, in the commercial, her name is Marion, and, uh, she's the one like, if you watch the Beetlejuice commercial that's out now when they're talking about that, and I'm not gonna say the name anymore. Anyway, if you see that commercial that's on, she's the one that throws the blowgun and hits the dude in the neck with the blowgun. And she's like deadpan or whatever. Well, she actually did a couple voices on Thundercats too. And I forgot about this. They actually had a live stage show that toured the country. That's really crazy that the Thundercats had a live stage show back in the '80s. That's just the way it was at the time.
What
That's
was it? It wasn't that damn I'm sorry, it wasn't that Cats show, was it? 'Cause wasn't that
no,
a
no,
stage
no,
show
no, no,
too?
no. It wasn't Cats. No, no, no. You're thinking of the Broadway
The
show.
producer yeah, I know. I'm just throwing a joke in there, but
I was gonna say, I was like, "No, no, no, no." You know? But with that, those shows were so good, but the whole time, those shows, they were just directed, so we would just buy their toys. And that's really kind of funny. But give me your thoughts on Thundercats and what you remember about the series.
I thought it was a really, really, really good show. I was a huge Thundercats fan. My favorite Thundercat was Tigra. Tigra had the
Mhm.
whip. I got a second favorite, which is Panther or Panthro. I forgot how to pronounce his name. But Lionel was never my favorite because he was always like a little weak. But
And I see what they were doing with, Lionel, because Lionel, they were still trying to make him be a child,
mm,
but he seemed more annoying to me than, like a leader should have been, and then the whole time he's like, "I'm the leader of the Thundercats," and this and that, and the way he talked was so, like, grandiose, and he
yeah,
was it was really odd. There was a couple times where he had to actually do certain tasks, and the way he
mhm.
did some of these tasks, I'm like, "It doesn't make sense." And then he even beat Panthro in one. They had this thing where he had to do these trials to be the leader of the Thundercats and all that,
Yeah,
and
he had to beat them all.
yeah, and
If
he had
I'm
to
not
beat them
mistaken.
all at their own game, and one of them was beat Panthro in strength, and I'm like, "How did he beat Panthro?" Panthro was the
Yeah,
biggest,
that was
strongest out of
crazy.
all of 'em. Speaking of Panthro, Chris and I actually know somebody who's done a really good cosplay of Panthro. It's really dope. Um, it was actually really good. He did his own version of it, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So, but now those toys can go. If you listen up, if you actually have even if it's not in mint condition but a good condition toy, you can get close to $2,500. Probably mint
Mm.
condition is probably 2,500 or more. Um, for a couple of different ones, but yeah, Thundercats, and actually, it's not even just Thundercats. A lot of nostalgic toys. you can actually go to a lot of these places, and there's so much. Oh, wow. Chris said he forgot a zero. It's actually $25,000. That's wild. I did not expect it to be 25,000. That's crazy. So, and it's so funny. I still got some of my old GI Joes in my closet, but I took them out a couple of weeks ago when I was like going through my closet and looking at stuff, and some of the rubber bands are broken, so some of them are coming apart because the rubber bands dry rotted. Um, anyway, though, we're gonna move on from Thundercats and let's go back to GI Joe.
Okay.
Did you have a lot of GI Joes yourself?
Yes, I sure did. I had GI Joes and GI Joe vehicles like Sky Shark and the Sky Raven. Sky Raven was like, you ever seen the Blackbirds of the 80s, like the
Yeah.
stealth, like
Yep.
along with the stealth bomber. That's because that's what it looked like.
Mm.
Yeah, man. I had I had the Avalanche. It shot discs. Man, I'm going all the way back here.
So so it's so funny because the Sky Raven, um, I wanted it, but I wanted it before it was called the Sky Raven. I wanted it when it was called let me see if I can remember what the name of it was. The Sky Raven originally was called, it was oh man, what is it? I can't remember. Chris, can you look up and tell me what the actual Sky Ravens was? It was basically it was based off of the Cobra vehicle.
Mhm.
And so that's what happened with a lot of the GI Joe toys. A lot of the GI Joe toys actually were just like rehashes. So Tiger Force. Tiger Force had a lot of GI Joe and Cobra vehicles mixed together. Python Patrol. They took a whole bunch of GI Joe and actually too in the third season of GI Joe, you actually see how the Patrol was created. It was created by Cobra Commander, and it was really weird the way he did it. Like he copied things from a snake, and it was weird. But anyway, um, Python Patrol. But a lot of those original vehicles, they just resold them. They just repainted and resold it. You know, um, yeah, so, yeah, it was part of Sky Patrol, but there was another name for it, and I think it was like the Night Raven or something like that,
Mm.
Night Raven, G.I. Joe, I think, yeah, that's exactly what it was called. It was originally called the Night Raven, and that one was so dope because that one came by the time it got to Sky Raven by the time it got to Sky Raven, it actually was missing, like, the little escape pod. The Night Raven originally had another escape pod, and that escape pod sat on top of the Raven, and it was actually really dope, and I actually just recently watched, like, a nostalgic video about talking about these, and that was actually one of the better vehicles that they actually produced. But, do you remember when they came out with the Shuttle Complex? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. I don't
Okay,
remember that.
so the shuttle was pretty much like the USS Flag. And do you know what I mean by when I say that? It's like the USS Flag.
Mm.
Every kid wanted it, but only a handful of kids got it. And so like for in the 80s, and I think the shuttle complex, I think it was called the Crusader. But the shuttle complex it came with its own crawler, it came with a crawler, it came with a shuttle, and it came with a booster, and the shuttle sat on top of the booster sat inside of the crawler, and so it was like 3 things came with, I think, 2 figures, and those 2 figures, they ended up like, one was the crawler driver, and the other was the actual shuttle, astronaut. So, um, that complex there was a couple of different complexes like that, where they were so massive, and they were so expensive, and back then, they were only, like, maybe 100, $200 somewhere around there, but it was so expensive because that was $200 in the '80s. So, just like the USS Flag, every kid wanted it, but there was only a handful of people, and um, Black, I don't know if you remember, there was this dude, and it's not the Donald that you and I both know, but there was another Donald, like, there was a couple of Donalds that we had that went to school with us, but there was a Donald who
Uh,
lived across the street from me. I'm not gonna say his last name though, but the Donald who lived across the street from me, he actually had the USS Flag. So that was actually pretty wild. So it's funny that they had all these different things, and the USS Flag was actually in the show, and they did all this stuff to promote it, and now that made the kids want it even more. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, and so, oh, here it goes right here. So, Chris said in 1987, G.I. Joe's sneak attack on a Cobra air base in an undisclosed location yielded a surprise, a fully intact and fully armed Cobra Night Raven. So that's how it ended up becoming part of the Sky Patrol. So that's what it was.
Oh wow.
Um, but yeah, that was the thing about it. So they took a lot of these toys that they wanted to either rehash or basically it was some exec that came with an idea is like, all right, we need a new toy now. Okay, let's take this other one. All right, well go ahead and throw it in the show so the kids will fiend for it. So leaving GI Joe alone, let's talk a little bit about one that you didn't know there was a toy for, Brave Star. Tell me what you remember about the show Brave Star.
Well,
Well,
I
I
remember
remember.
that he had different powers. He had powers of animals. So he had strength of the bear, eyes of the hawk, ears of the
Mhm.
wolf. Yeah, he was really I was so enamored with Brave Star because of
Yeah.
the powers that he had. You know, and I even remember the theme song when it came on. I ain't gonna
Yeah.
sing it though.
Yeah, it's all good, it's all good. I I'm trying to remember that, and that's one I'm trying to find on any of the streaming services. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure there. Before I dive into it, the USS Flag back in the '80s when it was released at $89, man.
Oh
You
wow.
can and you do you know you still cannot find an intact version of that for under $200? You probably couldn't even find it under 5. If you can find an intact, near pristine too pristine version of that, it's gonna cost you some change. I've seen somebody who built, their own version of it though, and it was actually pretty cool. Um, Going back to Brave Star, sorry. Um, that just blew my mind how much that cost, and it seemed like it was so expensive. That's so weird. So that's probably why, some people were able to get it while others didn't. Brave Star ran from '87 to '89. 2 years, man. That's it. That is it.
I
But
just find that is so crazy.
yeah,
Man.
it's very crazy, and so I had the toy. I don't remember who bought it for me. It was either my parents or it was a relative that gave it to me for Christmas or my birthday or something like that. I had actual Brave Star. I do remember, and, that's why I wanted to rewatch the show because I was trying to remember, it was like I think it was like Tex Hex or something like that, was the guy who was like the villain in that show, but they had a version of the toy laser gun, and they had Brave Star's version, they had Tex Hex version, and each of them had so the show was based kind of like a cartoon western, and Brave Star was, he was a sheriff, Marshall Brave Star, and, was it looked like he was a Navajo too, but, he fought against, Tex Hex and his gang, and actually, Tex Hex actually was created for Ghostbusters, um, but when they saw the character, he actually be taken from that lineup, so and they actually put him in that new series instead of putting him in Ghostbusters, so that was actually pretty cool. And now thinking about it, I kinda actually see how he actually was lined up for Ghostbusters, but it's so funny because he looked like a Ghostbusters character that was in the next Ghostbusters, the one that's called The Real Ghostbusters, I believe, or whatever the Ghostbusters show, the second one with the monkey. But anyway, Brave Star. They had these toys, and the toy that I got, I didn't get the laser guns like I wanted, but that was perfectly fine because I actually got the lead character, Marshall Bravestar. And years later, as I got a little bit older, but I was still kind of playing with the toys, I believe. I don't know. I might have just even just only had them on my shelf or something like that. I can't remember. I know I was still in school, but I can't remember if I was in middle school or elementary school or whenever it came out. But when I had the toys, the whole series went through when we were in middle school. So, I mean, well, no, it went from, end of our elementary school to early middle school years. So, when I had the toys, I was in middle school, actually. Um, but I ended up getting his horse. Do you remember what his horse was named?
I don't remember the horse's name.
The horse's name was 3030. I will never forget the horse's name because it was a horse that he rode, and then whenever they went into action, his horse turned into basically a biped. You know, he turned it from a quadruped to a biped. He stood up on 2 legs, and he had his own, blunderbuss looking like a gun, and he actually, like, would back him up. There's actually, like, pictures, whatever, where, 3030 and Bravestar are back to back shooting, and it's crazy. So,
That's
I
pretty tight.
forgot what Texas's name what the name of his horse was, but they each had their own horse, and they had their crew, and, you know, each one of their crews had special, things that they did. That show was so dope, but it was so short-lived, man, and that got me. It that's a show that actually should have had a little bit um, more of a chance, you know? So, um So we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to get another series. Give me one more series that you actually can think of that you had, uh, like you had the toys and you remember watching the show. Tell me one more.
Um, if I can remember correctly, um, 'cause we've already talked about Masked and Cop.
Hmm.
Um,
Did you have any of those toys, Masked or Cop?
yeah, I had Nightstick. Uh, I had Nightstick, and I had the other one. I forgot what his name was, but he was sort of like one of them bicycle, the motorcycle cop guy. You
Hmm.
know, I
Yeah,
forgot what his
Highway
name was.
from Cops, right?
Highway. Yeah, I had
Yeah,
Highway. I had
yeah.
Nightstick and Highway, and I had 2
Okay,
villains. You
okay.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, and it's so funny because I ended up getting Masked, and my mother bought me, like, a motorcycle dude, and I can't remember what Piranha, I think no, it wasn't Piranha. It might have been Piranha, but anyway,
Mm.
she ended up buying me a motorcycle, character, uh, a masked character, and then, I traded with friends, whatever, and I ended up getting a couple other ones that was it was kinda funny, though. Um, so it's so funny, here's a show that I didn't watch, but Chris wanted to put in, and I believe that this one needs to get a special mention because I do know people who talked about this show when we were kids a lot, Robotech. There was so many people, and the thing about Robotech is that there was so many people who watched this show and had the toys, and then there's people who don't even realize that a lot of the toys from Robotech was mixed into other toys like Transformers.
Mm. Oh,
So
no,
you
I
remember
would never thought
Jetfire?
about that.
You remember Jetfire
No,
from Transformers? Jetfire. I know you
no,
remember
I don't
Jetfire.
remember Jetfire.
He was the white jet that was, like, had red highlights everywhere,
Okay, yeah, now that you describe
and
it,
he started
yep.
out as a Decepticon, but he ended up joining the Autobots later.
Mm,
So, Jetfire, which, other people call them some other ones, they called him also, Skyfire. He was originally, a Robotech character, and if you actually look, you can actually see some of the Robotech characters, in that biped, plane form, so it was actually, you know, one of their fighters. So, they've actually
that's
had that.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, right? You know, so, anyway,
Yeah, that's
that is
interesting. But
that
let me throw in something that should have never had any damn toys and should have never even existed was the GoBots. I'm sorry, it should have never existed. The
good.
GoBots should never existed. I hate the
You know
GoBots.
what? GoBots got a bad rap. Got a bad rap because, honestly, they couldn't live up to Transformers, and that was the
Mm-mm,
only problem.
mm-mm.
I enjoyed the I and see, now I'm not saying that we were poor, but, you know, we weren't able to get toys as easily and quickly as other kids, and, you know, like, you know, just my parents didn't spend money on toys like that. So, we ended up getting GoBots before we got Transformers. We got more GoBots than Transformers, and to me, I love the GoBots because of the I was still getting Transformers, and, I was still getting Transformers in my head, but they also had their own thing about them that was actually
Mm.
really dope, and, like, they actually had this thing that Transformers never had or couldn't have, where you can actually put the GoBots in a certain kind of, armor type thing, and it was like a little suit, and those suits had 5 parts, and those 5 parts turned into a bigger robot. So, the
That's
Transformers.
how it work, but it kinda reminds me that's how it work, but it kinda reminds me of Constructicons, bro, I'm sorry. But you know
Well,
what?
and I was gonna say the Transformers version of that is a Constructicon, but however, the GoBots version, you can actually put the GoBots together, and not the GoBots together themselves, but the GoBots go into that suit. So the suit, you know what I'm saying? So you had extra stuff to it, and of course, they were just doing more to sell. And like I don't know if you remember in that Transformers episode. You remember me talking about that in the episode? The GoBots was created first. The only
Yeah,
reason why
that's true.
Transformers are more remembered is, 1, because they're bigger, better toys, but they were put out first. The GoBots was created first, Transformers was put out first, though. If you look at the timelines of everything, and I would have to go back and look at the notes that I had, but the timelines for everything, GoBots, yeah, the GoBots should have been bigger than they were, and they got a bad rap, but, everybody's just like, "Oh, well, they're, like, great value Transformers," but no.
Well,
GoBots
I'll say this much. I'll say this much. The GoBots had sucky names. The GoBots, I mean, just the fact that they're called the GoBots, go where? Where you going? But anyways, I'm
And
just saying,
you know what?
I'll throw that in there. But Transformer had all the dope names. I mean, you had Optimus Prime, you had Omega Supreme. You remember Omega Supreme?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do remember Omega Supreme, but and here's the funniest part about it. I think basically by the time the GoBots got out, they gave up and they started naming them people like they was like leader 1 is the GoBots leader.
You see,
uh,
that's what I mean. See, yeah, that's exactly what Leader One. Well, I mean, there's no reason.
Psykill. Psykill was the villain's leader, and
No,
actually
that was a nice name. That was
yeah,
nice.
well he was a Robotech cycle too. So that so he was actually based off Robotech too. So that's actually was pretty funny, you know. So, but anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. Um, yeah, all the Transformers took all the really good names, and and honestly, they pretty much did, and actually, it's so funny. So if you watch that show that I talked about called The Toys That Made Us, in that show, you actually, and I think I said this on the other podcast too, the Transformers podcast. In that show, someone and that was in Hasbro that was actually helping make the GoBots actually said Transformers first, and then somebody else was like, "Nah, that name sucks." And they did not
Oh
they
my
decided
god!
not to name the GoBots Transformers. Can you believe that?
Wow. Yeah, that's right. I think you did. Yeah, you said that out. Yeah, you. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yep.
Well,
So
whoever said, I mean, whoever was responsible for that was the lame. I'm sorry, you're lame.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. So, but anyway, I just wanted to kinda get into a little bit of this nostalgia. We're probably gonna go ahead and do a revisit of these toys and all that, and maybe 1 or 2 of the series. Now that I told Black that Cops are back on the air, we might actually do a deep dive of the series Cops. Who knows? So, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode because, like I said, this one for me, it brought back so much nostalgia. But I would love to hear some of the toys that you've actually played with. If you're an '80s kid, if you're an '80s kid, if you're '90s kids, whatever your age group of you listening to this is, I want to know some of the toys that you used to play with that actually had accompanying shows, and tell me, some of your thoughts about those shows that accompanied with those toys. Um, you can actually reach out to us. You can email us at toldmywifepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at toldmywifepodcast. You can follow us on Facebook. I told my wife I'm paying bills. You can also subscribe to our YouTube page at I told my wife I'm paying bills podcast. Also, you can actually find me on TikTok. I'm on TikTok at SlimTour78. I post basically, I mostly only post podcast content. I do share some funny stuff here and there. I haven't done any TikToks of myself yet. I don't know if I ever will, but you know, um, reach out, let us know your thoughts. You know, tell us anything about these toys that are nostalgic to you. Tell us about what drew you into a certain toy line that you like. I would love to hear some things about that and just tell your thoughts. So, like, you got anything to say about this?
Oh no, just piggybacking off of you, man. Got any ideas, any toys you like? Hey, give us a shout, man. Share it with, you know, uh, most likely me and Slim and our producer will go over it, man. Might make it a show. Who knows?
That's what's up. All right. So And listen out for our next one. Our next podcast should be our Halloween podcast. And if that's not going to be our season finale, the next one after that is going to be another Halloween podcast, and it's definitely going to be our season finale. But we're coming up on this is going to be our second year, man. Isn't that dope?
Oh
2
yeah,
years
man.
down.
It's
So
passed by like it ain't nothing, you know.
right, right, yeah, yeah. So I'm really happy about that. It's actually really cool. So look out for it, you know. But until then, I'm Slim,
And I'm black. I don't know.
and we wanted to say thanks for listening.